You clicked because you saw reports suggesting Benjamin Netanyahu locked Donald Trump into a war with Iran that he cannot now exit. The stakes here are not just about Middle East stability or the survival of an Israeli prime minister. They go to the heart of how power actually works when domestic political survival clashes with global strategic goals. By watching this, you will understand why a failed peace deal creates more value for Netanyahu's regime than a successful one does, and why any American administration trying to force a resolution finds itself trapped in their own logic rather than being dragged into war by manipulation. To see the trap clearly, we must first discard the idea that leaders make decisions based on moral consistency or long-term regional peace. In international relations, survival is the only constant metric. For an Israeli government facing unprecedented internal fragmentation and legal challenges at home, external conflict serves a specific function. It unifies a fractured coalition by presenting an existential threat that overrides domestic disagreements. When Donald Trump entered office with a vision of rapid normalization between Israel and Arab states, he was operating on a logic where peace equals stability. Netanyahu operated on a different calculus entirely. His political survival depends on maintaining the status quo of high tension because a sudden drop in threats would collapse his coalition before any benefits from normalization could be realized for him personally. Consider the structural incentives at play here. In 2016, data analysis suggested that Donald Trump's rhetorical style was unique among presidential candidates, creating a disconnect between campaign promises and policy implementation. This is not just about rhetoric. It is about how political capital flows in an era of polarization. When a U.S. administration attempts to force a peace deal, they are effectively asking the Israeli leadership to sacrifice their primary survival mechanism for a diplomatic outcome that may never materialize fully or benefit them directly. The result is resistance disguised as security concerns. Netanyahu does not need to lock Trump into war through some elaborate conspiracy. He simply needs to maintain enough ambiguity and threat perception to keep his domestic base intact while allowing the U.S. administration to believe they are making progress. Quick resource note: I keep a curated set of Amazon search links in the description for books, gear, and tools relevant to this channel's topics. Some are affiliate links, so I may earn a commission at no extra cost to you. Please consider supporting the channel by using those links if you find something useful. The mechanism of this trap relies on what we might call strategic ambiguity. When a leader is under pressure, they will often escalate external threats to consolidate internal power. If Trump pushes for de-escalation or peace terms that require concessions from Israel, Netanyahu faces an immediate loss of political standing at home. The incentives are diametrically opposed. For the U.S. administration, success looks like reduced violence and normalized relations. For Netanyahu's regime, a successful peace deal removes the very justification for his continued leadership during difficult times. Therefore, a failed peace process is more valuable to him than a successful one because it preserves the narrative of existential threat that keeps his coalition together. This creates an inescapable strategic trap for any U.S. administration attempting to force a resolution. If Trump tries to push too hard on Israeli concessions, Netanyahu can claim he is being forced into a dangerous agreement by Washington, thereby rallying domestic support against external pressure. This dynamic was observable even before the current conflict escalated further. The research indicates that social media platforms played a significant role in shaping political discourse during this period. A study of Twitter strategies for politics showed how agenda setting works through platform mechanics rather than just organic public opinion. When Netanyahu controls the narrative on these platforms, he can frame U.S. pressure as an attempt to undermine Israeli security, regardless of whether such threats actually exist or are being exaggerated by his own administration's rhetoric. The data from 2016 regarding Trump's unique rhetorical style suggests that traditional diplomatic channels may not function as expected when dealing with a president who operates outside established norms. If the U.S. president relies on personal relationships to bypass bureaucratic inertia, and if those relationships are tested against hard domestic political realities in Israel, the leverage evaporates quickly. Netanyahu understands this better than most. He knows that Trump's approach is transactional but also volatile. By keeping the conflict status quo ambiguous, he can extract maximum security guarantees from Washington while avoiding any commitment to a peace deal that would weaken his regime. This is not about locking someone into war. It is about ensuring that no one can force them out of a state of preparedness without sacrificing their political future. Now consider what happens when the U.S. administration tries to break this cycle by offering incentives or applying pressure. If they offer security guarantees, Netanyahu accepts them but continues his policies because he needs the threat narrative at home. If they apply pressure, he frames it as an attack on Israel's sovereignty and gains domestic sympathy. The result is a stalemate where neither side can achieve their optimal outcome without breaking the other's political foundation. This explains why peace deals so often fail in this region, not due to technical impossibilities, but because of misaligned incentives between local survival needs and global strategic goals. The most valuable insight here is that the trap is self-reinforcing. Every time an American administration attempts to resolve the conflict, they inadvertently strengthen Netanyahu's position by providing him with a new narrative about external threats. This creates a cycle where diplomatic efforts actually prolong the very conflicts they seek to end. The regime does not need to actively sabotage peace. It simply needs to survive long enough for any proposed solution to become politically toxic in Israel. Once that happens, the U.S. administration is left holding the bag of failed expectations, while Netanyahu retains power through the continued existence of the crisis he claims to be managing. This dynamic explains why we see repeated failures in diplomatic initiatives, regardless of who sits in the White House or the Prime Minister's office. It is not a failure of negotiation skills or good faith on either side. It is a structural inevitability where local political survival mechanisms are incompatible with global peace objectives. When you understand this, the behavior of leaders that seems irrational suddenly makes perfect sense. They are playing a different game than we think they are, and trying to force them into our rules only deepens their commitment to theirs. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I am a one-person team working hard to make each video better than the last. Subscribe if you found value. It is the best way to show support. Drop a comment with your biggest takeaway. See you in the next video.